Okay, so we're going to start with some meditation. Please get comfortable. And even though we might give the mind the instruction, the body the instruction to relax, sometimes that's not so easy to do. But if we take some time and we accept where the body's at and where the mind is at in terms of its relative calm or agitation or tiredness or whatever, that's our first step to being able to settle. And then whatever you observe in the body or in the mind, you can witness it. Right now, for me, there's something happening I've never seen before. I close my eyes and it's like a whirlpool that I'm seeing spinning clockwise, and then it changes and goes counterclockwise, and then clockwise again. And I don't know what this is, some nimitta, some image, some concoction of the brain or the mind. I don't have to make anything out of it. I don't have to analyze it. It's just a sankhara. The mind wants to be interested in it because it's so different. Our mind is always catching on things that may be different, unusual, maybe things that we're trying to check out whether this is good or it's bad. And what does it mean to me? It's a tendency we all have because we're, existing in these bodies, seemingly separate from everyone else and vulnerable. We have a lot of conditioning around how we should be, what we should accomplish, even in Dhamma practice. Get samadhi, get the jhanas, be more virtuous, have more metta. Not that any of that is bad. It's all good. But that desire to get something and identify with it and try to feel safe, or I don't know, for you, what it is, maybe safety, stability, something like that. And it's very hard using ordinary language to even talk about how to cultivate without that impression that we should get something. Because we're so mired in the sense of self and the idea that I have to do something, I have to get something, I have to be something. And it's very hard to step outside of that. So the way through that is to just notice it, step back. Step back and step up, as Grace was saying recently, or click back and click up, however you want to think about it. We're looking at or observing, witnessing experience from a little bit of a distance. Not a long distance, but just enough to know that the observer is not what's being observed. Witnessing from a position of calm, from a position of wisdom, Dhamma. Or as a person who was a devout Catholic put it, seeing this, whatever it is, from God's perspective. And whether we think about it as God or pure awareness or consciousness or whatever, it's all part of our conditioning too. And our conditioning might have produced a very strong allergy to some of those words. That's okay. We want to know ourselves, what it is that lifts up the heart, helps us step away from what we're clinging to, step away from our preconceived ideas of who we are. Step away from the conditioning that's been shaping the way we think and speak and act, so that we can make real change towards freedom and peace. Again, sounds like accomplishing something. Can't really quite get away from that model. So we talk a lot about just relaxing and letting go. It's different from gaining something. And that our true nature, our true home is really peace and freedom from suffering. It's no wonder the Buddha talked about Nibbana in so many ways about what it is not. But he also said it's the highest happiness. The ultimate contentment. And as we're witnessing what we experience, what we think, what we feel, what we perceive, we can take notice of all that changes, all the things that change, that arise and pass away. Even if we don't get to witness the whole cycle, like a mountain. A mountain arises and it passes away. But a human life isn't long enough to see that whole cycle. But we can understand it anyway. I remember when I was a child in school, when our teacher talked about the Appalachian Mountains and the Rocky Mountains. And they said the Appalachian Mountains are older. They're not as high and jagged and as the Rockies because they're older. Interesting. Even a mountain range ages. Now, I'm not a geologist or anything close to it, so there might be a lot of other factors, and someone with a lot of knowledge might say that this isn't the right perception. But I think it's a really useful perception. So, in our short, relatively short lives, we do perceive a lot of arising and ceasing, particularly these bodies. Before this meditation, we were talking a little bit about pets, a dog. How many of us have had a dog from the time they were born, maybe until they pass away? You see the whole cycle. You see the whole cycle in some of the people in our lives. And we see the generations before us, even though we weren't there when they were born. As a human being, we have that kind of mind that we can know by inference that they were born and they were babies, and they grew, became adults, they aged. When I was little, my great grandmother seemed so old, and I was a little bit afraid. Somehow, someone so old, so different. It felt like it takes time for us to learn how we all get old if we live long enough. And she was in her 90s and she told everyone, you'll understand when you get to this point. You can't really understand old age until we're there. But we need to use our inference to start to really take in the pattern of arising and ceasing. And so often in the suttas, it's that realization of everything that arises ceases as the sign of stream entry. It's not an intellectual knowing at that point, it's deep. Feeling it in a way that we start to really let go of our identification, our any resistance, and confidence arises in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. It's beautiful. And then we come back to the, well, now I've got to get stream entry. Can we see that and try to remember that it's a natural process when we pick up the path and we have that commitment to awakening, that it will happen. Keep putting in the, oh man, here we go again, effort. Language so hard. inclining towards Nibbana. That's a beautiful way of thinking of it. And how it's as natural as the rain coming down on the mountaintop and flowing down through the crevices and the cracks and coming into little streams, into the creeks and the ponds and the rivers. Finally, going out to the ocean. So maybe it's more about just continuing in direction towards liberation. With the mindfulness and the clear comprehension to know when we're sort of going the wrong way, getting caught in some whirlpool on the side, coming back to practice. Not just meditation. It's important, but it's only one part. Investigation. Really having such raw honesty about where we're at, what we're experiencing, what the mind is doing. And the observer, the witness, with wisdom, we can see what our conditioning is. And instead of being judgmental and critical and punitive, to really just understand there are causes, there are conditions that have come together. We don't have to follow those thoughts or those feelings or those impulses. When we see it and we don't follow our anger or resentment or critical mind, judging, comparing mind, when we choose not to follow it, let's just see it for what it is. And we're on the road to freedom. When we reflect like this, then maybe there's a point where the heart feels so much metta, compassion for our own conditioning, compassion for the conditioning of others. Compassion for the suffering that comes with ignorance. Thank goodness there's the unconditioned. As the Buddha said, if there weren't, we wouldn't have any way out. And it's good to remember that the Buddha didn't create that. Sometimes you might hear people talk or write, they might write about the Buddha giving us a way out or giving, like as if he made that up, made some decision about it. He pointed the way to what actually is reality, how it works. And in that sense, he made it available. We're so lucky. It's so beautiful. More beautiful than anything we might see or hear or smell or taste or touch in this whole world. So I'm going to just ask you to draw this meditation to a close. Gradually back to the space around you. I'm going to share a sutta with you. It's short. And it ends with a phrase that means shattering ignorance. It's not quite translated that way, but in Bhante Sujata's translation, I think he uses a little bit different terminology, but the word really can mean shattering, and I really like that. Shattering ignorance, really letting it go. So here it is. It's in Anguttara Nikaya, Book of Threes, number 33. So the Venerable Sariputta comes to the Buddha and he bows and sits down to one side, and the Buddha says to him, "Now I can teach the Dhamma in brief. I can teach the Dhamma in detail. I can teach it both in brief and detail, but it's hard to find those who can understand." You can even translate, it's hard to find someone who can understand. And it's true. It's pretty rare, I think. It's not true. I think actually a lot of people would like to understand life better, but how many of us are really sort of coming to it and willing to let go of our preconceived ideas fully enough? So anyway, Sariputta says, "Hey, this is the time, Blessed One. Now is the time. Let the Buddha teach the Dhamma in brief, in detail, in both. There are those who will understand the Dhamma." So this is the Book of Threes, and the Buddha says you should train like this, and he gives 3 parts to the training. And actually, this is one of the quotes that's in the mix when we do our New Year's Day, thus should you train advice. And I don't know if someone chose it this year or not. Maybe they did. But this is good for all of us, of course. And what he says is you train yourself that there will be no I-making, mind-making, or underlying tendency to conceit in regard to this conscious body. So it's interesting that the Buddha used this word conscious body instead of just the body, the consciousness, the sentient body. And now what does it mean? Well, we have that, like I'm making that, I'm thinking that this body is me, a very strong kind of idea that this is me or mine, and the underlying tendency to conceit, that very deep kind of tendency towards seeing myself as separate, comparing to others, having it, our ego, our egotism, our pride, or our shame, or whatever it is, that comes with that idea of a self. There's really no way to avoid that I know of when we come into this, birth in a human body. But to train ourselves to see it and to let it go is really powerful. And I was reflecting on this, and okay, let me tell you about the other two, and then I'm going to come back to this a little bit. The second one is no I making, mind making, or underlying tendency to conceit in regard to everything else in this world, all external things. So that covers it. Not clinging to anything, not identifying with anything, not taking anything as mine, no acquisitions. It's like that t-shirt they used to have out Wapanana Chat, people were wearing this t-shirt that on the back says no owner. That was a conundrum for me in the beginning. It's like, what are they talking about? But this is it, like this body doesn't really have an owner. And then the third one, and will enter and dwell in the freedom of heart and freedom by wisdom, where my I making and mind making and the underlying tendency to conceit are no more. So the freedom of heart, that's liberation by meditation, liberation, freedom of wisdom, liberation by insight. So samatha and insight, both together. So in reflecting on this, I listened to an interview that the Clear Mountain monks did with the monk who was participating in the Walk for Peace that I think most everyone knows about, happened here in the US. And he was hit by a car and severely injured, and his leg needed to be amputated. He lost his leg in that process. And they interviewed this monk. His name is Ajahn Mahadam. And beautiful, beautiful person. And the Clear Mountain monks were asking him various questions about the accident and about his participation in the peace walk. He had walked for 9 days with Bhante Panyakara and the other monks. And at that point, the Walk for Peace hadn't drawn very much attention. And he said that even before he went, he had this idea that there was going to be an accident. But he went anyway. And he feels like his life is devoted to the sharing and spreading of the Dhamma to help people find peace and relief from suffering. And in his, answering their questions, talking about what happened with the accident, he said they were walking, and I don't know if any of you have ever gone on a kind of walk on highways and whatnot, but it is, you know, you're out there, you maybe you need to get to some point to stay for the night, and maybe you're walking longer. I did this once too, and maybe you're walking longer than you wish. And he said it was starting to get dark, and this car hit him. And he said, as he was laying there on the ground, his right leg was hurting because it really got scratched up from the fall. And his left leg was numb, but he didn't know it. And he was losing a lot of blood. And when the ambulance came and the paramedics turned him over, then he started to feel the left leg. It was really badly damaged. And they put him in the ambulance, but then they didn't go anywhere. And he wondered why. But they came with a helicopter because they said if they had taken him with the car, he would have died. So they helicoptered him to the hospital. And as I said, and some of you may know this story already, but the leg had to be amputated. And this is a relatively young person. He had an enormous amount of Dhamma training, practice under his belt. He became a monk. He became a novice monk when he was 9 years old in Cambodia, where he was born. He moved to Thailand later to study more, and then to the U.S. And it's lovely hearing about his story. I really recommend you listen to the interview. But the part I wanted to share here is that when the monks asked him about how he felt with all of this, one thing he talked about was that he was using pain meditation to work with what he was feeling. And he said he was grateful that he had practiced pain meditation throughout his monastic life. He said whenever he was sitting and there was pain, instead of being focused on the breathing, which was his usual meditation object, he would use the pain as his meditation object. And what he could learn from that really helped him in this situation. He could really be with the pain as an object. So again, it's like the mindfulness is there, you're observing it, you're not in it in the same way as you would be otherwise. The other thing that he was asked about is, what were your emotions? Were you angry? Were you, and he's like, no. And he talked about the second arrow. He said he teaches people this a lot, not to add, once you're injured in whatever way, not to add the second arrow of being angry or upset or really harming ourselves even more. But he wasn't angry, and he said, I think about the person who was driving the car, and you're driving the car and then you hit a monk who's on a peace walk. He said he must feel awful. I'm not angry with him. And then he also talked about how, his intention is to really, as I said before, spread the Dhamma. And he said he was giving his leg as an offering to that purpose. He said when he went to the hospital, then Bhante Panyakara came to see him, of course, was there with him, the monks. And Bhante Panyakara, he said, was concerned for his reputation, not his own, but this Ajahn Mahadam's reputation. And I think maybe also like his privacy, because this is the point where with this accident, then a lot of reporters and there was a lot of interest and activity, and suddenly the peace walk, got this major attention. But Ajahn Mahadam, he said, yeah, I'm not worried about that at all. He said, use this opportunity to share the Dhamma and to really, benefit this cause of bringing peace. So it's beautiful. And to see that as an offering. And how does that relate to, I'm not eye making or mind making? Well, it's like seeing the body as the body and not being upset that it now is damaged. Not being offended or angry. And how that's not our normal, right, as human beings. And I was also remembering the contrast. When we lived in town as bhikkhunis, one of the ways we would get around on the San Francisco Bay Area Peninsula was by train. There's a really lovely train that goes up and down the peninsula. And I was riding the train one morning and happened to sit across from a woman who has started telling me a story about a friend of hers who was also a regular commuter on the train, and how recently she had been hurt because this train had 2 levels, and people on the upper level would often go down before their stop. So train's still moving, and they'd go down and they would line up and stand on this kind of spiral stairway going down to the main level, to the door area. And so people are standing there, and then the train really bucked, like a very strong jerking, and she fell and broke her leg. And this friend was telling me this person was very angry, very upset. She was trying to sue the train company, and she was trying to sue the person behind her who she says intentionally pushed her. And this is often the way we respond to things. We don't think, oh, these things happen to human beings. You don't think, it's pretty unlikely this person behind her is just out of some kind of malice pushing her. They probably were also knocked off balance. They probably knocked into her, but it's like the driver of the car. It's not going to want to hit a monk on the peace walk or anybody else, right? So it's just to kind of see how our human nature, our conditioning is, especially I feel like in this culture, pretty litigious and wanting to always find out who's at fault and blame them. And there's a lot of eye making in that. There's a lot of pride and conceit in that. And to just, it's not like we're going to be suddenly free of that eye making, mind making, and underlying tendency to conceit. And it's not like it's helpful to, oh, there it is again, and I'm this, pathetic person there's no hope, that kind of, it's also very much eye making and mind making, right? Identifying with those tendencies instead of just seeing them, excuse me, as the result of conditioning. So these examples are just, like opportunities to reflect. And that we can just see our own examples, see our own in our own mind, and not be upset with ourselves, not further add another layer of identification, but to observe. If we observe with mindfulness and wisdom, then we can just appreciate that these patterns are ingrained, they're concocted. And the beauty of impermanence is, and changeability is that we can change. We don't have to think like that. We can train ourselves, like the Buddha is saying here, train yourself. You give this up. And so, the second part, is the same kind of idea, but with everything else. Your house burns down instead of these friends I mentioned from time to time who were living in the Oakland Hills and went to the beach one day, and when they came back, the fire had gone through and their house was completely gone. All the books, the husband's a professor at UC Berkeley, all of the nice things in their home, their clothes, everything's gone. And I didn't know them when this happened, but later their attitude was, yeah, that really like opened things up for us, like the husband, he said, that's when I really started writing. Before that, I was just kind of like constantly researching. Now I had no library to stay focused on. So can we see can we see our attachments and let them go? And then dwelling in the freedom of the heart and freedom by wisdom. You might think, well, this is so far away. I'm not there yet. That's okay. You'll experience, or maybe you do already, times when there's freedom of the heart and freedom by wisdom. I mean, you can feel it just by sitting with whatever we're attached to and seeing it with mindfulness. This is how we train. And at some point, it really is no more. And then the Buddha says the same thing again. He said, when a practitioner has no I making or mind making or underlying tendency to conceive for the body, for external objects, and they're entering and dwelling in this freedom of heart, freedom by wisdom, this is one who has cut off craving, cast off the fetters, and by rightly comprehending conceit. So what the wording there in Pali means the total understanding of comparison. So this is another way to think of this. Think of this underlying tendency to conceit, and we compare ourselves. When they've cut this off, they've made an end of suffering. And then the Buddha refers back to a teaching in the Sutta Nipata. It's called Parayana, the way to the far shore. And it's a series of different people asking questions. And these are the questions of Udaya. And he said, the giving up of both sensual desires and displeasures, and casting aside dullness and the prevention of remorse, purified equanimity and mindfulness, preceded by the reflection on the Dhamma. This, I say, is liberation through spiritual insight, the shattering of ignorance. Now, if we look at those phrases, the giving up of both sensual desires, and the Buddha didn't just use the ordinary word for sensual pleasure or sensual desire here. He used a compound. So that would be kama, and not karma, but kama, not kama, like the result of our actions, but this is kama. That's sensual desire, sensual pleasure, but it's kama sanya. So it's the perception connected with sensual pleasures. Like, do you ever think about how what we find pleasurable isn't always pleasurable? We have a perception of it being pleasurable. It's not a sure thing. So there's this recognition concerned with sensual desire. So we're giving up this perception of pleasure. And then when he talks about displeasure, it's really, I don't think displeasure quite captures what domanassa really means. If you look at that string of descriptors, it's mental suffering, distress, discontent, dissatisfaction, dejection, depression, unhappiness, grief, negative state of mind. So that's what we're giving up. And we're casting aside dullness. So dullness, drowsiness, this is one of the hindrances. Fuzziness, sluggishness, we're throwing off the fog. And prevention of remorse. So how much of our thoughts might be related to regret? So these words together, nivarana and kukacha, is preventing, obstructing, blocking, warding off. I like the warding off of uneasiness, anxiety, worry, restlessness. It says literally fidgeting. So restlessness. And it's like you're putting a barrier there to it, to that habit. And recognizing it for what it is. And a lot of time, all we need to do is really see it and observe it to put that blockade there, instead of taking those thoughts in and increasing them by giving them attention. And then there's purified equanimity and mindfulness. They're preceded by the reflection on Dhamma. So this is all about investigation. We're investigating the Dhamma, we're observing it, we're reflecting upon it. And that's how this equanimity and mindfulness become purified. And the Buddha says, I say, it says liberation through spiritual insight, the shattering of ignorance. So this is intended as, I'm intending this as another way of practicing with the first couple of sort of parts of the chain of dependent origination. You know, the ignorance and the creation of sankharas. And that we can really look at how, am I creating this identification with the body? Or can I observe this identification, this attachment to the body, and feel what it's like to just be distanced from it and see it and not fuel it? When you stop fueling the fire, it dies down. You don't have to throw water on it necessarily. You can just stop feeding it. So this is helpful because in some ways we might make more progress. As I said, it's hard to talk about these things without feeling like there's something I have to get or something I have to do. But to just see that things change in a positive way by stopping the things that keep the mental habits of I making and mind making going. And in that stopping, there's peace, there's calm, there's happiness, and there's love without attachment. Any questions? Or comments? Does it seem doable? Does it sound intimidating? See, every one of us, we read these things or we hear about them, and then we have some reaction inside that affects us in some way. And we can observe it and be present with that experience. Everything we observe with mindfulness and wisdom teaches us. There's no perfect, correct path, specific experiences. The perfect, correct path is that inclining towards nibbana, making use of the noble eightfold factors, those path factors. But there's so much variation there. So if you ever feel discouraged about what's happening in your practice, just remember that that too is the ego, the mind making identification, that we can step back and observe that layer with wisdom and kindness and acceptance. James?
As to the question, is it doable? Um, you know, I at various times feel yes, it's doable, and other times I feel I'm lost and confused.
Mhm.
Um, but I never doubt that. Um, I mean, even when I feel that way, I I can never conceive of anywhere to go but this way.
Yeah.
You know, it makes no sense to give up. Um, so you just keep, the path is clear, although it's difficult and confusing. And yes, it's different for everybody. So you have to be able to see the progress in the context of your own intuition.
Mhm.
Um, but anyway, it's mostly just that there's no going back. There's nothing to go back to. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, I
So
know that feeling very well. It's like,
yeah,
okay, this sucks, but there's no, the only option. However, having said that, even when we feel lost and confused, we can observe that
mhm.
sense of being lost and confused. And we can notice that the part that's observing that confusion and that feeling of being lost, is not confused.
Yeah,
And that part is what's saying, this is the right way. There's no other way. There's no way that I'm gonna find satisfaction in the world because I've tried that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is what I think is so important for us to recognize and to try it over and over again. No matter how you feel, observe it, be present with it, stepping back from it so you're not in it. It's not like you're looking at this pool of quicksand and you are not in it. You're not going down. You're observing it from the side and you're seeing it for what it is. And you're on solid ground in that mindfulness, in that wisdom. And then you can notice what the qualities are of that state. It's not confused. You don't have to put any words to it. Doesn't have to have some great wisdom, but it's knowing. And Ajahn Chah would say, this is our true home. That's our true nature. It's available right now, every time, always. So we don't have to be afraid of feeling anything. We don't have to be afraid of feeling jealousy or anger or anything. We have the option to observe it instead of follow it, instead of feeding it. Thank you, James. Catherine?
Would you be able to?
It's a little hard to hear you, Catherine.
Yeah, I have to get very close, which is
Yeah.
bad.
It's okay. It's okay. Don't identify with that. It's
Just
hard.
a face,
Yeah.
a large human face. Could you put the text back up a second? Because there was
Sure.
something I wanted to ask, but I couldn't
Okay.
quite get the word.
Okay, which part do you want?
It was towards the end.
Okay. Okay, that's towards the end. Maybe
Okay, cool. Um, somewhere where there was something about so there was the wisdom and heart, or wisdom and
Oh
love.
yeah, we'll go up a little bit. It's that part where it's where enter and dwell in the freedom of heart and the freedom by wisdom. Where
Yeah.
yeah,
So the freedom of heart, I feel like I have a sense of what he's talking about, and still can't see it in the text, but the something of wisdom. Where is that? Can you hover your uh cursor over it? Because I can see your cursor.
like here's the
There, yeah.
heart and the freedom by wisdom.
Yeah. Freedom by wisdom. I don't know. Could you maybe say just something more about that? Because yeah.
Yeah, this is actually kind of these are kind of quote unquote technical terms in a sense.
Okay.
So the freedom of heart is referring to liberation by more like by the meditation practice of samadhi. And the freedom by wisdom is more pointing at the liberation by wisdom, by understanding, by insight. So it's what I like seeing this together, enter and dwell in the freedom of heart and the freedom by wisdom, where this identification and sense of self is no more, really, is what it's saying. And so it's like, yes, those words in English bring up certain feelings or a certain sense, but to know that the samatha or the samadhi, the calm, the stillness, is a kind of freedom when we experience it, and it can lead to ultimate, complete cutting off of all defilements, all the fetters, as it says in the next paragraph, and the freedom by wisdom, the insight into the truth. And then these work together, in later, as the commentary and all of the later additions to the body of information or reflection that's been added, we really see a big separation between these two. It's like, oh, you're practicing with samatha or samadhi or jhana, or you're practicing insight, but actually they work together. And the freedom of heart, the freedom, the samadhi, the calm, the stillness, the collectedness of mind benefits the development of insight, and vice versa. So the very first talk that Ajahn Mahabua that was translated into English was Wisdom Conditioned Samadhi. So that might not be quite the title. Wisdom Developed Samadhi, maybe. It's like they work together. And so that's really what it means. The Buddha's referring to there.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And if you ever think, well, that all seems so grand and high and far away from where I'm at, just use that as something to observe. It doesn't matter what it is that's coming up for us. Don't let it discourage you. No matter how discouraging it sounds, it's only conditioning. It's only what comes to the mind because of the conditions of the past. We don't have to follow the past. Nancy?
I have a question about the meditation with pain that the monk was talking about. Do you have a guided meditation on dealing with pain, or do you have some direction that you could talk about where to go for more information on that?
That's a very good question, and I'm not the right one to answer it because I'm gonna knock on wood because I'm not really asking for more pain in my life. It's like, no, but I haven't had a lot of pain, and I haven't done that kind of well, I've done a little bit. I mean, I've talked a little bit about, using dental work as a way to practice with pain without anesthesia or Novocaine or whatever. And I feel like that's kind of minor league in a way, because it's not going to last, and it's not being inflicted with any kind of malice, and it's kind of controllable, whereas most of our pain is not like that. I guess another place that I send people sometimes with regard to pain is to look into mindfulness-based stress reduction. And even though, people might criticize the extraction of mindfulness from its context in the Dhamma to be used in this way, you're a Dhamma practitioner, so you know the context. You're not gonna you get the virtue and all of the other stuff that goes with it. But the way that they offer this for people who have all different kinds of problems, physical and emotional, mental, is really valuable. I found I've taken the course, and I also took the teacher's training for the course, and I did a 10-day retreat with John Kabat-Zinn a long time ago. He's an excellent practitioner. It was not developed without the full range of the Dhamma and an incredible discipline in practice. So I wouldn't discount it as a useful tool. And the thing that I got out of it was how valuable it is for people to come together and practice, who are all experiencing all different kinds of really difficult problems. And so I think you can learn, and he's documented how people come in with, you know, their various levels of pain, and how they leave having, you know, reporting that has been reduced. Not necessarily that there's less pain, but because of mindfulness, of, you know, using mindfulness with those conditions, they find relief or increased relief. So those are some thoughts. I think someone put something in the chat that might help too.
Okay, thank you. And it sounded like there was a specific meditation that he was referring to. So I was just wondering about that. But
Yeah, I think from what I gathered, it's just really, really using the strength of mindfulness to be with the pain, which is what you're going to get with mindfulness-based stress reduction. His because of his entire practice and dedication, it might be a little more intensive. So we can also, you know, put forth our energy into it, and you know, but that's probably the extent of my
thank you.
my offering there. Yeah, you're welcome, Nancy. Good, James.
Hello, thank you for the talk, Ayya.
I'm sorry,
Can you hear me okay?
a little better now, yeah.
Thank you for the talk. Kind of a comment and kind of a question, I suppose. I think you said about, is it doable? And I think, as always with Dhamma, it's nice that even if you're not highly attained, you get a sense of these things work, you know, even in small bits, you know, like you can see how sensual desire can burn. You can see how that sort of mental aversion can create needless weight in your life. And I always find it helpful that even if sometimes it's only glimpses, you can see that it works even in little bits. So, yeah. The text was interesting because it says about, I can't remember it verbatim now, but about the giving up of sensual desires and the giving up of the mental pain, or I can't remember exactly what it said. And it also said, and of dullness and of remorse. And it made me think about how, well, two things really, is I wonder why dullness and remorse are mentioned specifically at that point. You know, see, it kind of feel like remorse should be rolled into the sort of mental pain sort of section. So it's sort of strange how it's put aside there. And it makes me think that I've noticed how there are times when it feels like the self does take a back seat, and even when life is challenging, and I just sort of carry on with life with what I tend to characterize as sort of just patience, basically. You know, more things happening, good or bad, but just, you know, keep going, keep doing what you need to be doing. And like I say, I've characterized that as patience and a positive thing, but I wonder, thinking about it, maybe that's actually a kind of dullness, really. Maybe so that's perhaps not necessarily a good thing, because, you know, you just sort of retreated into dullness rather than, you know, you see what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
I do. And it's really good observation, because we do want to be clear about what we're perceiving, what we're doing, what we're up to, you know, like this is why we have to be so honest with ourselves. And you just helped me realize, James, that when the Buddha talked about those different things, so you're giving up sensual desire and you're giving up the opposite, the ill will. And then you're giving up dullness and drowsiness, which is really that third. These are the hindrances. These are the 5 hindrances. And you're giving up remorse, which is the fourth one. I mean, it doesn't have all the pieces exactly in the usual form.
No.
It's dang close, you know? And so I think he's just like, these things are the roadblocks. This is the stuff that gets in the way, and we need to let go of those things. But we also have to, in order to let go, we have to see things. We have to know that it's there. So this is what you're talking about. It's like, okay, when I'm being patient with the circumstance, am I being mindful? Am I being clear about what I'm feeling and thinking? And can I open more up to that? And can I view it through the lens of the Dhamma to know like what it really is about? So it's like, if we're doing that, there's no dullness. And I think this is where we need to, you know, I think it's crucial for our awakening, for our freedom, for our peace, is to really see what we're doing. And as soon as we do see it, it's okay. I was like, oh, there's dullness here. I'm kind of coping. I'm not really practicing with this. I'm coping. I'm just, you know, getting through it, carrying on. And then, that's it. We need, okay, then we see it and, you know, we're observing that. Well, what's that about? Well, that's my coping mechanism. That's what I've been trained to do. It's what I was taught to do. And it kind of works. So keep doing it. But it's not freedom.
So it's not necessarily the wrong way to go, but it's not ideal.
Yeah, I mean, we've got all kinds of coping mechanisms that we've developed. That's how we've survived this far. And it's not like we want to, you know, it's not like it's wrong or bad, even though every one of them is going to have a drawback or a downside. But we want to, as you said, you see glimpses of the path working. You know that this is working, and like James Peck said, there's no alternative. It's not like you gotta like, oh yeah, let me just keep, you know, the dullness and drowsiness going, and maybe I can just stay checked out long enough to take my last breath. Well, then what? We want to go around again? I don't. You know, but not, you know, anyhow, just that honesty and that. So why do we get together and talk about these things? It's so that we help to, you know, it helps to inspire us, hopefully, remember that I can do this. No matter what's happening, I can do this. This is doable. This is doable. I can, you know, take that one step back and that one step up and look at this, what I'm experiencing right now in this present moment with wisdom and mindfulness, and really and see it and not identify with it. To see where I'm identifying with it. And once we see where we're identifying with it and the suffering that it causes, it's natural to let go. And that's that glimpse of seeing that the path works. So we take those glimpses and we make them bigger. And pretty soon they fill our whole life experience.
I suppose so. It's like I suppose sometimes, like I say, when I've sort of put aside my own kind of concerns, and I'm doing things for others, you know, and which is, you know, it's a good thing to do. I kind of, I suppose I feel like, well, shouldn't I feel better? Because, you know, say I'm like giving up my own kind of desires and preferences to serve others, like particularly my mum as she gets old, and the dog. because the dog always needs walking and attention and play and everything. And yeah, it's good that I go out of my way and put more effort into sort of serving their needs. I kind of end up feeling like, well, shouldn't there be a sense of you're supposed to reflect on your own wholesome deeds and the good things that you do, and that should provide some kind of uplift. I suppose it does sometimes, but I guess that's kind of a time when I'm more likely to just feel like, what I say, just a sense of patience that I'm doing this good thing, and that's great. But it's not like there's a sense of uplift with it. You know what I mean? It's I'm not quite sure what I'm trying to say, really.
Well, I think that's a helpful observation. It's like, yeah, I'm doing these things for mom. I know it's good. I feel kind of dull. Yeah, okay. Observe that. It's like, okay, that's the feeling I'm having right now. Why? I mean, I'm not so we don't want to identify with our good actions in a way that also creates a self. And we want to see where we're I making, mind making. And, we can also look for what other things are lifting the heart, giving us encouragement to practice, maybe helping someone else who, like, it's like if the mind gets used to things, right? And then they're not as potent, like even, eating something delicious, and then pretty soon, it's not a big deal anymore. And it's not like we're going to try to satisfy with some kind of central stimulation, but what if we, not the same thing is going to be inspiring all the time. So what if we change it up? Maybe there's something else that we want to add in. And we've got quite a few options. And I think just noticing, yeah, I'm not really feeling what I would expect to feel. And even expecting to feel something is part of our identification. So just, investigating it more, maybe looking at, because we can look at the tendencies of our own mind. If we tend towards kind of a bit depression or something like that, or we tend towards getting really anxious or whatever it is, to really observe that. And again, what's the observer? What's happening there? Is there uplift and peace and calm and joy in that? Where's the joy in your practice? When I was asked, what do I want to teach at Cloud Mountain next time, I was thinking, what do people really need? I think we need to pay attention to joy. So it's 9 days of joy, 9 different kinds of joy, 9 different flavors of joy, and it's not, I'm sure I'm gonna talk about, it's not about trying to get away from the bad states, the depressive states, but it is about recognizing the beauty, the I'm almost say magic of the Dhamma that comes through in different ways in the practice.
Yeah, that's quite true. I've found sometimes that you have to be open, receptive to it. Sometimes, I think some time ago I kind of found like there's just a sense of just pointing the mind in the right direction, you notice things that that you could perhaps otherwise not see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, James. Yes, Serena.
I almost hesitate to try this because I can't really find the words. There's so much in this today for me in the grieving the
Yeah.
loss of my husband.
Mm-hmm.
It comes back to observing and investigating and really seeing the selfing that's in the grieving. And that's hard. It's really difficult to think of letting go because it's so personal, the loneliness. But what the sutta you had up there, I thought, well, how can I do this with grieving? And then I saw the word grief is listed in there. So I thought, well, it is doable.
Yeah.
There's no question about that. I have to remember that. So
Yeah.
this has helped a lot. And I came so close this morning to not getting up and joining. I was a little bit late, but I know, my heart knows I have to listen. That's all there is to it.
Yeah.
If I'm going to continue surviving this, I need Dhamma.
Yeah.
And that's all there is to it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
You're welcome, Serena. And I also sent you an email. And what I'd like to encourage, because we do need the supports in our life for that joy to come, that letting go of the sense of self, that letting go of our attachments and entanglements. And I want you to start thinking about what you really want in your life at this stage and what kind of living situation you're going to want as you get older.
Yeah.
Maybe a kind of situation where you're among other people and you can make friends. Really try to think outside the box.
Okay. Maybe I can talk to you about this sometime because this has occurred to me, but I have no clue where to go with it at this point in time. So, this is going to have to be addressed at some point here.
Yeah, thinking about what kind of supports do we need in our life to to be able to put our attention on Dhamma and to let go. And what I've seen in my own certainly limited experience around grief is that at a certain point, we can let go more if we're thinking about what we want to create in our future that's going to help us develop. And it's simple things. And you're getting a friend request up there from Jarrell, thanking Jarrell. Yeah, and so I have a few examples of people who have done things, but others in the community might have examples too of ways to think about this. When you put your attention on how I'm going to progress in this, what I want to do, what kinds of things I want to bring into my life. And then the devas start helping them line up. And we start to let go of the past.
Okay.
Because the past is just the past.
Yeah. I had that thought when you were talking today about this moment. And I have had moments when I've tried to bring myself back to this moment. Has to be a continual reminder, I think, because grief is so strong.
Yeah, well, and the strength of our suffering, we can use that as a strength for our practice because that's the key motivator. I mean, the Buddha just started right out with that. There's suffering and there's a cause.
Yeah.
We can let that go.
Okay.
Yeah.
I need to go deeper into this, now it's time. So,
Yep,
yeah.
it is. It's time. That's it. For everybody, all of us, all the time. It's this time. It's time now. Yeah, thank you. It's always wonderful spending time with you. Thank you.